This is my wife's 1996 third generation Toyota 4Runner. It was just a deer casually walking through my shop. When I built this thing, I made a big mistake. And I think now it's finally come back to bite me in the butt. We were casually driving this thing along the other day when all of a sudden it locked up, brought us to a dead stop. At first I thought that maybe the motor blew up because I've seen a 22RE blow up on the highway and just instantly lock up the rear tires, but the 3/4's still kicking and it's healthy. So that leads me further down the drive line. Let me show you a clip. All right, I just drove this thing to the car wash. It's kind of like this. So you go, can you hear that noise? Let's grab, oh, dead stop. Holy cow, this is violent. And this is why I referenced the mistake of dropping the engine, trans, and T-case from the cherry picker, is because maybe something in the transmission or transfer case has piled up on me, and it might have been something to do with dropping that back in the day. Good news is I'm a bit of a hoarder when it comes to these Toyota parts. So this is a spare R150, and this is a spare transfer case. So let's start with that. I'm gonna take out the old transmission transfer case from this unit that has over 500,000 kilometers on it and put in the spares. And hopefully that fixes it. Might as well start by draining the transfer case fluid because it is soaked in oil. So maybe over the years it had a weep that has run dry. It doesn't look like very good oil, but it also wasn't dry. Oh, no, it is full of metal. Well, that's promising. I don't think we need to swap the tranny, because it seems to be the T-case isn't that healthy.
I know I said that I don't think we need to swap the tranny, but we've come this far anyways, and I have the spare transmission with much less kilometers, so I figured I might as well pull the transmission and swap it out anyways for the new one.
So yesterday, I got the old transmission and transfer case out of this thing. As you can see, this transfer case is like caked in gear oil, where the new one is totally, I mean, it's dirty, don't get me wrong, but it is not soaking wet like this one. Without cracking things open and digging any further, I can't see what could have possibly caused the issues that I'm trying to figure out. So I've got no idea if putting in this other transmission and T-case is even gonna help. But at the end of the day, they have lower kilometers on them and they have never been dropped from a cherry picker. So first I'm gonna clean them up a little bit and then we'll toss them in.
I noticed that the inside of the bell housing was caked in oil, so I pulled off the input seal plate, applied some new RTV, and put it back together.
So there's no real reason why I moved this bell housing over. It didn't need to be moved over whatsoever. It was just a lot cleaner than that bell housing. The motor that this tranny was attached to leaked oil like crazy, which absolutely soaked that thing. But the rest of the tranny isn't actually that bad. And believe it or not, the transmission and transfer case that I took out of this 4Runner just now, I cleaned them really good before they got installed. All of this gear oil that's on this transfer case is since it was built. This time around, however, I think I'm just gonna slap these in as is. I'm not gonna wire wheel them down. They're not that greasy. Like, look at the transfer case. There's a little bit of grease around like the top and stuff, but other than that, it's just dirty, so I'm not worried. Let's throw this stuff in.
Change me.
Now that the transmission and T-case is swapped out on this thing, we're on to part 2 of this video. My plan was to go take this thing for a test drive and see if it's fixed after doing all that work, but overnight it decided to snow a whole bunch, and I don't really want to go drive this thing around, get it all muddy, dirty, and wet, and park it back in the shop to then work under a soaked 4Runner. So we're moving on to something that I should have done a long time ago, and that is to fix the panhard bar in the back of this 4Runner. If you don't know what a panhard bar is, it's essentially just a piece of tube that is fixed to the frame of the vehicle on one side, and it goes across the axle and ties into the axle housing, with the purpose of centering the axle to the body with a linked suspension. But when you lift a linked suspension, all of a sudden that panhard bar goes from flat to an angle. And when it's at an angle, it's all of a sudden pulling the rear end to one side. So if you're looking at it from the rear, one side tire is sticking out and the other side is maybe pulled in, and also just causing all sorts of weird driving characteristics. So we're gonna fix it. We're gonna build a panhard bar correction kit. We're gonna take the panhard bar from an angle back to flat. There is kits on the market to accomplish what I'm trying to do here. I'm gonna do it a little bit different. By the way, I set up a computer in the shop so that when I'm doing CNC work, I don't need to run into the house every single time I want to like draw something up. So I should be able to just draw stuff up here and go straight to the arc droid and to work, which is what we're about to do. Let me show you the plan. The kit I was just showing you on the computer welds to the top of this bracket here, which I guess for the average guy at home, it is less work. But what I'm going to do is I'm gonna get my grinder and just cut the old bracket off. So I'm just gonna cut straight across and around and have a nice flat base here to then build a new panhard bracket off of.
Every time you come around, I feel great. Simplify the things that I complicate. We can cash out, lock it in, move it to the country, it's no debate. But first things first, no stress, but I wanted to see you change. No stress, but I wanted to see you change. Every time the figure comes around, I'm wrapped in plastic like Laura. RIP, baby. But all that I want is to see you change. God, the rain fall outside. I see the killer in your eyes. You're not fantastic. I meet my deadline. I keep it concise. You made it very clear you're missing no good. Now I know you're no good, but I wanted to see you change. All I want is to see you change. And maybe, baby, you may feel the same. But all that I want is to see you change.
Hey, I think that looks pretty dang good for the axle side. I added a brace to the back here, and there is 3/4 of an inch adjustment between each of the holes. Not bad if you ask me. Now it's time to work on the harder side, which is frame set. So the frame side works a little bit different. I didn't just straight up cut the whole thing off. Instead, it uses the factory mount to actually bolt through and hold the brackets in place while you weld it. So the factory frame kind of bows out on the inside, which is why there's a notch in here. And I designed it so that this notch and factory cut match my cuts perfectly. So now I just need to follow in here with a welder, weld it around, do the same thing to the back side, and then we will make a plate to cover up the rear. And just like that, we have completed the Panhard correction kit. Now, if you guys are interested in doing this to your own 3rd Gen 4Runner, I'm going to cut out a couple of batches of these kits so you can buy it on the website. Available probably when this video comes out. Now we're down to giving it a coat of paint, putting the 4Runner down to ride height, and then see how the Panhard fits. I got brand new bolts and brand new lock nuts for this. There's one side and down. Top hole. Oh, that is like, oh, it's almost inverted. I think I need to go to 2nd hole. And through. That is perfect. Just look how flat the Panhard now is. So it's like it was from the factory, which means the axle should now look like it's centered from the outside. Let's look at the wheels. There is the tire poke on this side. It's pretty well, it sticks out just a little bit from the flare, and it is the exact same on this side. That means I nailed it. Man, that's awesome. And this thing looks so much better with just a little bit, and this thing looks so much better with the rear track width matching the front thanks to those spacers. So that means there's only one more thing that I want to do before I take this out of the shop and finally take it on a test drive and see if it still locks up and see how it handles with that new Panhard bar placement. Next on the agenda, we are tackling something else that has bothered me ever since I built this 4Runner. And that is the rear bumper. It's fine, it looks fine. But the problem is there's nothing supporting these wings that come out over the side of the 4Runner, and if you shake it, look at all that movement. And you can see it wiggling when you're driving down the highway, which isn't ideal because it makes you feel like your bumper's gonna fall off at any point in time. And I got a pretty simple solution for this. I dug through my scrap pile and found 2 of these brackets here. I drilled a couple holes in it for bolts, and all this is gonna do is gonna bolt right here to the frame. And from there, I'll grab a piece of tube and send it over to this side somewhere to brace it. I changed my mind. The old plan, using these, required like putting a bunch of holes in the frame and running bolts through it. And the proper way of doing that is to sleeve the holes in the frame so that when you tighten it down, it doesn't crush. And I really just don't want to put a bunch of holes in this nice frame that I put under this thing, well, a few years ago now. So I'm going for a slightly less elegant solution that won't be as strong, but at the end of the day, this thing isn't really a wheeler, it is a grocery getter for my wife. And that is to use this square tube. We already have these rusty plates here that are the bumper mounts for this bumper. And I think I'm just gonna like weld the tube to the bottom like that, come over, but before it gets here, put a little 45 or angle to it so that it matches this angle. So it comes down and over and meets up to this. Not as strong, but it should do lots as far as stopping this thing from vibrating like crazy. And just like that, the bumper is braced, and it is so much more sturdy now. Just from those couple of little braces, it's all it really needed. So now, I think I'm just gonna sand this thing down really quick, give it a new coat of paint, and then, heck, I can kick the 4Runner out of the shop. Am I confident that it's fixed? I don't know. Maybe, if that was the issue. Also, I don't have any of the trim or anything in here, so it's gonna be a little loud. I didn't want to fully piece it together just in case that wasn't the issue. I'm so curious how the rear end feels now with that track bar fixed. No weird sensations, and that track bar fix, oh, that made this thing so much better. So far so good. First, so I've done more driving now than I did last time I did when it locked up. So I'm gonna go for a slightly longer drive. think I'm gonna call this a success. It drives so good. It's not locking up anymore. The 4Runner is back in the shop, which means I didn't actually fix it. The first test drive yesterday went pretty good, except there was a couple of weird noises here and there, which I thought was maybe just because I could hear more because of the shifter boots being gone. But directly after that test drive, guess what? I went for another one. The issue came back, but this time I was 100% able to tell that it was the front diff, which is fine. I've got a parts 4Runner sitting here with a perfectly good front diff, but the problem is it's a different ratio. This thing has 410s, the 4Runner in the shop has 430s, so in order to fix it, I'm going to have to swap both the diffs, which means crawling around in the snow and mud underneath this thing. Luckily, it's first thing in the morning, so the mud that was here yesterday is currently frozen, so I'm gonna capitalize on that and get the diffs out while the ground is not soft and muddy.
Dream about a life out on my own, where no one knows my name in the city far from home. Yeah, I know the city has the busiest streets, and there's nothing like home in the fall with the leaves, but I always dream about it. I always dream. Every now and then I stop and think that little town ain't so bad. Something about the same old same is so plain, but then again it's all I've ever had. Planning my way out, and if that plays out, no, I'm never gonna come back. But every now and then I'll stop and think that little town ain't so bad. But wish that life was more like on TV. High rises and cool cars in a fast-paced downtown scene. Maybe I'm intrigued by the wrong kind of things, but I'll never get to know if I don't get to see. So till then I'm wishing for it. Can't help but wish. Every now and then I stop and think that little town ain't so bad. Something about the same old same is so plain, but then again it's all I've ever had. Planning my way out, and if that plays out, no, I'm never gonna come back. But every now and then I'll stop and think that little town ain't so bad.
Now that the front diff is back in, I pulled the 4Runner out, spun it around so that I can work on the rear end here, where there is the most amount of room in my shop, which means now we are on the final part of this 4Runner fixing thing. And honestly, the easiest part of this too. Swapping out the rear third member is by far easier than the front because you need to take way less stuff apart and there's way less tools that you need. Another hour and this thing should be back on the road. Alright, it is time for one more test drive, and hopefully everything feels good. It feels like there's way less driveline drag. Like, even though it's got a different gear ratio in it now, it's got 410s instead of 430s, it kind of feels like it's got more power. Which is strange, but I'm hearing zero noise from the front end. I think we're good. Yep, I think I can confidently give my wife her 4Runner back now. During the last test drive on camera, like, I thought this thing was good. It felt the same it did like before it started locking up, so I guess that front diff was probably going for a while, and it always had some sort of driveline drag. And we just kind of got used to it. I don't know. This is awesome. It's fixed, totally fixed. But anyways, guys, that's about it for this week's episode of Dirt Garage. It's about 6 o'clock Thursday night, and I gotta edit this video and get it out to you guys tomorrow morning, so I'm signing off. Anyways, if you guys do me a huge favor, hit that thumbs up button, and hey, consider subscribing. I upload weekly Toyota, building, fixing, wheeling, and off-roading content. Anyways, I'll catch you next week. Peace.